First, let me show you the few tools that you need. I'm using a 3/8 drive, an extension, about 6" extension with an Allen bit, and that's a 5/32, an Allen key, it's also a 5/32, and most importantly, a 13mm wrench. Better if you have a ratcheting wrench, it would help a lot more as well. All right, I'm starting with the rear shocks. I've cleaned them up just so it can be easier for you to look at them. You have 4 tubes here. You have a long rebound tube, you have a short rebound tube, you have a short compression tube and a long compression tube, and each of those tubes are working with a different zone inside the shock. What I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to adjust just about 2 clicks. That's a full rotation, which is why I would use usually the Allen key, because what I would do is I start from one place, and if I'm going in or out, you come back to the same place and you do 360 degrees, and that is 1 full click pretty much, or 1 turn. You don't want to ever make large adjustments. You start from the base that you and the shock supplier has given you, or the tuner that you're working with given you. A lot of them like you to start somewhere in the middle, and then you go up or down from there. Putting more compression in or out doesn't mean you're necessarily stiffening your shock. What you want to do is make sure that the combination of your compression setting and the rebound setting puts the shock puts your suspension in the zone as you're going over bumps or you're using it. You want it in the proper area when it's actually functioning. If it's outside of that zone, you're gonna feel it different. It's gonna feel awkward, uncomfortable, or possibly too stiff for you. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to start with the rear, show you how you start with the adjustment, and then we're going to go to the front. So we're going to start with the long rebound tube, and to loosen it, what we're going to do is I'm going to redo this. So you want to make sure that your ratcheting 13mm is at the loosening position, so lefty loosey. You put it over the nut and just hold it. You don't want to start turning, because when you do, it's going to turn the key here that we use the Allen wrench for, and then it will change the position. So the entire time that you are going to be working on this, you take your Allen, you put it in there on the key, and before you do anything, you hold it in place and you start loosening the top nut on the shock. And you notice if I don't hold it, it moves with that. You want to make sure it stays in place. And you just loosen it a few turns. You don't want to do a whole lot of turns. And then when you're done loosening it, you turn it around, you put your key into where you can hold that nut in place so it's not moving. And now I want to go out 2 turns. If you're doing this from scratch, you go all the way in until you can't turn anymore. Don't overturn it until you can just barely feel it's getting snug and you can't turn it, and then you count backwards. It's always good to go all the way in and then come back out. All right, so I loosened this as I showed you earlier. I'm gonna go all the way in now and count backwards the amount that I need. You notice the whole time I'm holding the nut in place. I have it separated a few turns up. I'm gonna hold it in place. I'm just gonna keep turning in until I can't turn in anymore. So now that I went all the way in, I switch direction on the drive. I'm going to use a plane, which is, I'm going to keep it on the same plane as my wrench. I'm holding the nut in place. I'm going to go back a quarter. I want to go out 8. So that's 4 times 8. That's 32 quarters. And you just make sure you keep count. So I'm going to go back 1 quarter. I don't count the very first one. And then I start. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 31, 32, and I stop. Then I grab my Allen wrench. I make sure I have this in the locking position. I'm going to hold the key in place, and I'm just going to tighten it. And don't let that move while you're tightening, because you want to keep it as precise and the count as possible from one side to the next. So I have adjusted the long tube. Next, we're going to do the short tube. Starting on the short tube, I'm going all the way in. I'm going to show you how you feel that you need to stop going in. Okay. It's pretty in. You can't push it anymore gently. It's in. You switch. You create a reference point, and you want to, now I'm gonna go up 6. So 6, I'm gonna count 4 quadrants on here, and I'm gonna do pretty much, just keep going back, you know, 4 times. Each 4 times it gives you 1. So I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 1. 1. So we're gonna work on the bottoms, and those aren't as much fun, but they're actually just as simple to work with. Same thing that you do up top, just reverse, you know, all the directions on the wrenches because you're going the other way. You have to always imagine that you're sitting on top of the nut you're working with, and you still have righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So this one I had at 10 out. So right now I'm gonna go all the way back in, and then I'm gonna count backwards my steps. So I went all the way in, as I did all the other ones, and now I'm gonna count backwards. I'm also gonna use a quadrant. I could use an extension and go all the way down, but because I'm working with gravity here, I'm gonna just use my quadrants, and I'm gonna count, I'm gonna go out 8, so I'm gonna count 32 quadrants. First one I never count because I torqued it all the way in, so now I start. 1, 2, 3, it's 1, 2. Now that we finished up the rear, I'm going to start working with you on the front, show you how this goes. So if you look at on the Kings, there is a red cover over here. It takes a 1-inch wrench you could do, or you can put a socket on it, and then you just twist it off. It turns right out, and that's your cover. It's a billet aluminum cover. So then there's a knob right here, and I think we should zoom in here just to show you what it looks like. This is your knob. Right goes tight, left goes loose. I use a 1/2-inch socket on this. It's just easier for me that way. Again, you go all the way in, and then you start your way out. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go in all the way, and then I'm gonna come out 15 turns. And you can hear it click. Every click, instead of a turn, you go clicks here. So every click is just setting. So this is all the way in, don't push it. Then I'm going to back this out. 15 clicks. I'm going to hear 15 clicks. You could even do it with just the socket, and it's easy to go by hand. Just make sure you listen for the click, because you can hear it and feel it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. If you go all the way, you can go 24 clicks out. So if I am 15 out, that means I'm putting this at 1/3, give or take, about a little over a third in, because you really don't want to. If I would be off-roading, I would go 2 more in. That would be at all the way at half. You really don't need to go further than that. On mine, because they're valve different than your OTS King 3.0's, but this is pretty much it. And then you go ahead and put the cap back on, and you just make sure it's real clean underneath there. There's nothing leaking. Put it on. You tighten it a little bit by hand. If you want to give it a nudge with your a little overkill, but just a teeny bit of a 1/8 of a turn after that, and that's it. Mine has never come off. So this indicator right here, I wanted to bring you guys a little close up. It gives you soft one direction and then firmer the other direction, right? So you always go in and then you count backwards. You just follow this direction, and there's a dialer, and every click you hear, it means it went a step. All right, I hope this kind of helps you guys out. Again, this doesn't tell you how to tune your application specifically. However, I will give you guys a rundown. I went and got myself a custom valved King 3.0's. I didn't want to go with an OTS. I wanted something that gives me more control at high speeds. I tested this truck high speed on the trails in West Texas and New Mexico. It did really well. I did some more adjustments to it several times until I felt like it was giving me the perfect feel for what I was doing off-road. I adjusted a little bit more for also on-road use. Can you get from this particular suspension the best of both worlds? Yes and no. It's also your preference if you like a stiffer or a softer ride and whatnot. I run 34 PSI in the front, 32 in the rear. That also affects it. I'm also using the BFG KO2 All-Terrain C-rated. Those are a lot lighter tire. So what I ended up doing is on the rear, I have my compression set to 8 out. I have the Rebound on the long tube set to 8 out. I have the Rebound on the short tube set to 6 out, of course, on both sides. On the front, I'm sitting at 15 out. If I go off-road, I'll probably go 3 more clicks in, so that will be 12 out. This is a much firmer valving. You may not need to do your setting as aggressively. Advise you to start somewhere in the middle and then go 2 clicks at a time from each direction, just to see how you like this. Why I chose my suspension and a lot more details on these Kings will be coming up in a later video. Stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe, and I appreciate your support. We'll see y'all later.